This is the first ever episode of the SNG weekly wrap up. It's weird because me and Joe do a podcast together, so we're kind of used to doing this, but not in video format, so it's kind of fun. To do this, let's introduce ourselves. I'm James Crange. I work for SNG Network. I also work for a culinary school, so I think that qualifies me to talk about the draft, talk about a lot of kind of different sports. I am here in Texas. Joe, you are all the way in New Jersey. What's up, man? Give a little bio about yourself or something. I don't know. Tell the people who you are.
Wow, a little bio. Graduate of NFLU, Monmouth University. Spent a couple years working college football, NFL, video department. I've diverted into a different field for a little bit. I make car commercials, so if you're in the tri-state area, New York State, Connecticut, Danbury, White Plains, where else? PA. Could be me. Could be seeing my handiwork. So I don't know if I'm qualified. I don't think anybody's really qualified to talk about draft prospects, but I definitely have a little bit more of a perspective, I guess. Yeah. Not than you, because I think you've put more probably work more recently into this. I have really not paid a lot of attention to combine stuff. I'm all in on the fall and winter that has happened.
Yeah, I think the only people that are really qualified to talk about this are the ones that are either in the building, which you used to be. So there'll be one team in particular that will be kind of touchy-feely for you. I think it's either them or people like Mel Kiper that are talking to people in the building, and then everyone else like us is just like a schmuck, like putting out their own opinion. Like there's no.
But that's the best part of it, and during this time, there's nothing better than just throwing out opinions and
if you're wrong, who cares? Like, who remembers? Unless you're getting old takes exposed, and then even then it's fleeting, so who really cares?
Friend of the program, friend of the other program.
Yeah, friend of our other programs. Friendability, actually, you can kind of see. Shirt I'm wearing. But so what we want to do today is we kind of want to break down the offensive battles, kind of your top guys for each offensive position. Well, I say each, but we're just doing quarterback, wide receiver, and running back. But let's jump right into it. I think there's 4 quarterbacks that are going to be drafted here in the first round, most likely. And you might see 3 within the first 6 picks, which is kind of crazy. We were redrafting the 2006 NFL draft a couple of weeks ago. And what was it? Rodgers was picked 24th and Smith was first. And that was it, which is crazy because Rodgers, obviously one of the best quarterbacks of all time. But this year, I don't know. But before we get into the actual breakdowns, I personally don't love this quarterback class, and I'm shocked that people love it so much. To me, there's one guy, and I don't want to spoil who that is, but there's one guy that stands out above the rest, and then the rest are kind of average. So are teams just hurting so much for quarterbacks, or what is it this year?
I actually like the class. Teams are certainly hurting for quarterbacks. It's kind of now the bridge has been kind of like –
You got it.
I got it. The gap, the generation gap. Your 04 draft guys are now slowly fading out.
Yeah.
And now you're getting this new kind of class in, and you've seen it already with Mahomes and guys like that. No, I do like this class. And I think the importance of the quarterback is kind of back a little bit after the Mahomes show this season. I think this is obviously going to be a really weird time to be a rookie quarterback, and probably get into that a little bit later. Even weirder than other years because every single year it's an impossible adjustment for many and a difficult adjustment for everybody. And I do like this class a little bit more. I do like the systems that they could potentially fit into, especially just because pretty much every head coach that needs a quarterback this draft is an offensive-minded head coach, which is kind of exciting for not just really the NFL as a whole, because I think you're going to get like a brand new group of stars. And I think there are a couple guys in this class that have that ability, but it's going to make a lot of fan bases that have been kind of starved for a while pretty happy.
Yeah.
So I already have some differing opinions here.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said. I'm not as high as on the quarterbacks this year, obviously, but let's go into our first little matchup here, or whatever you want to call it. But your top 2 quarterbacks this year, depending on who you ask, but Joe Burrow and Tua Tagavailoa. I think I got that. So for you, Joe, who are you taking? Are you taking Burrow? Are you taking Tagovailoa? Maybe we'll answer that at the end. Let's kind of break down each guy first. What do you like and what do you not like about Burrow?
What I like about Burrow is he's probably the best early down quarterback that I've ever seen. First, second down, really can just put you in third and manageable almost every time. And I think that's why LSU is so good. There's a lot of quarterbacks, like I always talk about Carson Wentz, and even the Colts offense last year, like just that really succeed on third down. The guys that just really can take control on 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. For LSU, it seemed like they were never really in 3rd and long. It was always first down, either getting a first down or getting a big chunk of yards. He was tremendous in any time anybody would play zone. His skill players obviously were amongst the best in the country, not the best, but he really elevated everybody's game. Obviously, Joe Brady was rewarded for his, efforts in that national championship run, which I think for many was unexpected. At least for me, I was always kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop with Burrow, and
it's like the Gonzaga thing.
Yeah, I kind of watched the season with kind of a hater's perspective on him, but I think there's no doubt he had one of the greatest college seasons of all time. What I like about him, obviously, just a really, really good leader. It's really hard to maintain that consistency week in, week out, especially in the SEC and in any power conference, any conference really, to have that same mindset. They didn't slip up really at all. Couple games where he looked like he was a guy that could totally take over any NFL team. And there were some games where he still looked like a 1st or 2nd round pick. There really wasn't a lot of games where like he really struggled out. Mississippi State, which probably has a more of a pro style defense than a lot in terms of prospects and scheme, took over in the second half after kind of struggling in the first half. National championship game took him a little bit to get going, but as soon as he's able to kind of dissect what's going on, he was pretty much unstoppable. So I think your biggest strengths are the leadership, the intangibles, which I think probably go the longest way out of any prospects, anything, any grading, any system, any scouting report. That has to be the first thing you start with. So if he's able to command that locker room, and obviously he's a little bit of an older guy and more experience, and he was a transfer, which I don't love the transfer thing, but it was obviously a situation where he was behind guys that were probably as good as him in that particular system at Ohio State, like Justin Fields and JT Barrett. Weaknesses, do you want to go first with strengths? Or
let me just kind of jump in. And I am not super high on Burrow, so I'll get that out of the way first of all. I don't want to take too much away from the guy. He had 5,671 yards, 60 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions last year. That's insane stat lines. It's just crazy. I am skeptical of Burrow, though. I think he was in a great scheme for him. I think that he was also in a system that had 4 NFL wide receivers in it, and I think that helps for sure. He was borderline bad 2 years ago in his junior year or redshirt junior year or whatever it was. And then he also, I just felt like there's something to a guy being rated as an undrafted prospect going into a season and coming out of it the number 1 overall pick that does keep me a little bit hesitant. And I was hesitant on Baker Mayfield as well. And I think we saw in this past season with Baker Mayfield, he really didn't have a good year. I mean, he's a fine player, I think. But I'm not sure that Joe Burrow is going to be this franchise transcending quarterback that the Bengals would want him to be if they do take him number 1 overall, which I think we can assume that they would. And my guy in the draft is definitely Tua. So, just to get that out there, I think, and I'll let you do your weaknesses first on Burrow. But for me, I think Burrow is great. Like you said, he's got the intangibles. He's got the leadership. He's got that football IQ, which is really high. But I don't know. To me, it's just 1 year is not enough to draft a guy. And I don't know if that's old fashioned or not. But 1 year to take a guy first overall and put all your money on that. If I was the Bengals, I would much rather trade away the pick to the Dolphins and let them draft Burrow, and then take either Tua or Herbert and take in some extra draft picks. But that's obviously not going to happen. But I don't know. Do you disagree with what I'm saying, or do you have other weaknesses?
I don't totally disagree, and that's why I wanted to get into my weaknesses. I think he's got to be the first overall pick just because of the connection to Ohio. I really like Zach Taylor. Um, with Zach Taylor, a lot of his concepts aren't totally as similar to, Joe Brady. The pro spread is a little bit weird to kind of like compare it to other places when you're talking about kind of the disparity in skill level between receivers and a lot of the defensive backs they're facing, even in the SEC. The one thing with Burrow is I think he still is QB1, but a guy like Kyler Murray last year, like I don't think Burrow has as big of an impact on a team coming in as Kyler Murray did.
Totally agree.
The arm strength is obviously pretty good, but he doesn't have the same like opposite hash to far hash kind of accuracy as a guy like Kyler Murray. I think that could kind of come. I don't really believe in that he's tapped out potential wise because he's a little bit older. A guy like Cam Newton really only had one good college season, and he has had a great career. So I don't want to put a lot of stock into that. That was part of the reason why all season I was worried. I was like, how can a guy have really a 7th round undrafted tag and then all of a sudden ascend to where he is now? I don't think that you have to hold all that against him. I think it's a legitimate concern. But I think a lot of what makes him good is the confidence, is that, winner mentality. I don't know if he's really that much better skill-wise than Andy Dalton. I know you love Andy. I think in Zach Taylor's offense, it really does reward that mid-level intermediate accuracy that Andy Dalton had. It's a lot of bunches. It's a lot of trips. It's a lot of, kind of fitting a ball in a space where you're going to have receivers kind of not nearby, but a lot of it is dependent on having that protection that he had at LSU. Because there were a lot of times at LSU where he had really all day to throw. And even against those defenses like Clemson, like Alabama, he was still able to pick apart, kind of the weak link on the field. For Clemson this year was Tanner Muse. With every college team, you kind of have that one guy that you can pick on. Not really the same in the NFL, but he's going to have good skill players. If AJ Green is back and ready to go, he's going to have he's going to have definitely an advantage over whoever Miami takes because of that, because he's going to have 2 really wide receiver ones and a guy like Joe Mixon, who I love. And, that was a team that didn't have a first-round pick, really. Jonah Williams got hurt in training camp. Yeah. It was an impossible situation for them to really win a lot of games. They had really, really low skill level on both the interior defensive line and the offensive line, and, really no secondary. And that all plays into the offense. If you have a bad defense and you have, a defense that really can't keep a team off on the field, like if you're just scoring at will at them, it's going to be really hard for an offense to continually come back and to continually have to score and play perfect games all the time. I think he would benefit from having Andy Dalton stick around. I can't really see that happening. But that would be kind of like phase 2 for Cincinnati, is surrounding him with somebody that could be a good backup for him and kind of have an understanding of Zach Taylor's system, which, like I said, is not totally the same, but everything is similar enough where it's really very slight iterations on certain things. And who knows what even skill players they'll have. Who knows if Tyler Eifert is back? Who knows if they draft a receiver, can trade
John
AJ
Ross
Green.
stays healthy.
There's so many variables now. But the way it looks now, I think Burrow's definitely the surefire number 1 pick for them. And if he's a superstar, I don't think he's going to be a superstar, but I think he's a guy that can give you the consistency, durability, and dependability to at least have a really good product to watch on the field every Sunday for Cincinnati.
Yeah, and I do feel a little bit hypocritical because I professed my love for Alex Smith, 2 weeks ago. So it's hard to say that a guy like Alex Smith, who could benefit your franchise just by giving you stability for 10 to 15 years, would have been an awesome pick when I'm here kind of ripping apart Joe Burrow. So, maybe I am being a little hypocritical. I love Tua. I've loved, again, maybe a little bit unfair because Tua is playing against the same competition with the same kind of quality skill players. He's going to have 2 receivers that are going to be drafted within the first 15 picks this year, most likely. So maybe I can't take away from Burrow while giving to Tua, and that's a little bit unfair on my end. But I do love Tua, injuries aside. If the guy can stay healthy, I think he's got just, to me, a better arm. He had he just dominated at the college level, and he dominated in the SEC, and he didn't throw interceptions. He's got such a fast release on every ball that he puts out there. It was like it was getting to his receiver before his receiver was turning around. And that's where you talked about the time that Joe Burrow had. I felt like Tua had that time as well. Obviously, he's playing behind the Alabama offensive line. But to me, there was just something very pro-ready about the way that Tua attacked the game that I loved. But everything it comes back to is the injuries. And there was a time in January of this year where people were talking about Tua going back to school because they thought he was going to be a second-round pick. So it's obviously, there is that concern there. But I think after seeing him work out, seeing him be relatively healthy, he has climbed back up that board. And if not for coronavirus and teams not being able to have Tua come in for meetings and actually work him out, there's a chance that he could slide all the way up to the number 2 pick or even the number 1 pick, I think. Even though maybe Burrow is the home run pick there. But I don't know. To me, just the weaknesses I see for the most part are just the injuries. Am I missing anything there, Joe? And do you feel the same way about Tua that I do?
Well, I do think either Tua or Herbert is going to be the second overall pick. So I don't know how much.
So you think there will be a trade up?
Yeah, I think there definitely will be, at least into the top 4. I think one of them's going to go second. I don't think you could just throw the injuries aside. I think it's a giant part of his.
It is. I mean, he broke his hip. He had the concussion. He broke his nose.
So to me, that stuff usually doesn't just stop. That's quite often a problem that's going to continue after college and maybe even get worse. So if in a perfect world, yeah, he's probably one of the better quarterback prospects we've ever seen. I still do think he's probably the best RPO quarterback I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, he's so good, kind of even in that split second, before the play really begins. He's great. He's not just really a dual threat in terms of a runner and thrower. He's a guy that's able to really make good decisions. And even though the turnover rate wasn't like perfect like Burrow, I think he had a little more interceptions than Burrow, and you can correct me on that if I'm wrong.
Well, Burrow had the 10-1 touchdown interception rate for his senior season, but Tua's was 8-1 throughout his career. So Tua's better career wise,
but Tua's throwing a much more open offense, and there's obviously a lot bigger room for interceptions and anything like that. But his RPO stuff just, to me, puts him apart from Herbert. To invest your second overall pick, because you're going to have to invest a little bit more into him than you would if he was just, going to be your 6th pick or your 7th pick.
Yeah.
You're really, really going to have to make sure that he's the guy, and it's not a decision that I'm jealous of. I do think the injury risk supersedes the other stuff. And if you're Miami, who already got, bit by Drew Brees with the shoulder concerns when he was a free agent however many years ago, it would be really hard for them to pass him up. I do think they're going to draft him. I think when he is healthy, he's going to be very good. But I don't believe in when he is healthy, he's good, so that's why we should take him. I just think durability is ability. To me, it's in the same world. But there's some stuff he does that really wows you, and he's a winner too, no doubt about it. But to me, the deep ball accuracy, the RPO game is elite, probably the best out of any quarterback. I still probably would take Kyler Murray over him last year. But the situation for me, I would still have Burrow go 1. I think he's going to go to Miami at 2 or 4. So
I don't think it'll be at 2. I think Washington's going to take Chase Young. It's hard to pass that potential up. But I could see 3. I could see the Dolphins trading up to 3. For me, what it comes down to, and then we'll move on to Herbert and Love. But for me, what it comes down to is with Tua, I see a guy that potentially could bring me to a Super Bowl one day. He could light a spark in my organization, and he could be one of the best quarterbacks that ever walked through the doors in Miami. And then there's the other situation where he could get hurt again and totally flame out and be terrible. For Burrow, I don't think he's ever going to be terrible, but I don't think he's ever going to be great. I think you have a very limited ceiling with Burrow and a very high floor. And for me, if I'm taking a quarterback in the first 10 picks, I want a higher ceiling, and I'm not as worried about the floor because taking a guy like Burrow, if he's not going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback, you're pretty much starting at square one again. 10 years, I see him much more as an Andy Dalton than I do as a Peyton Manning.
Yeah. And we've seen a lot of the Chan Gailey offense over the years.
Yes,
I do think that's kind of a weird fit because you're going to have to really not so much be patient with him, but you're going to have to – you need a year to figure out what he's really going to be good at in the NFL.
Yeah.
So shout out to Chan for taking that. But, Brian Flores, he's really the only defensive head coach that is going to really look for a quarterback, in my opinion, unless Detroit decides to.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, the Colts, Chargers, kind of those other two wild card teams that could be looking for a quarterback in the first round. I think that's what you're going to talk about with Herbert and Love.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's not totally too big of a deal that Flores is a defensive guy. I think Flores has really shown he's going to be a good head coach. So I don't really put too much negativity towards that. But the Chan Gailey thing is a little bit weird just because he really is a guy that doesn't have any ties to Alabama at all. And I thought they were going to take someone with a little more familiarity. But that's the situation he's going to be in. I do think he's going to go to Miami. But it depends on who's going to go up to 2. I think if it's the Chargers, they'll be taking Herbert, but we'll get into that, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk about Herbert and Love, who right off the bat, I'll say I am not a fan of either of these guys. I bet you'll be a little bit more positive. But let's start with Herbert, and it's kind of here. I think we're in agreement that it's going to be Burrow to Cincinnati. It's going to be Tua to Miami, and then you've got Herbert and Love left for, like you said, the Chargers are definitely most likely going to take a quarterback. You've got definitely most likely. You've got the Colts, the Patriots, and those are probably your 3 teams that might take a quarterback in the first round. I think it's going to be the Colts, not the Patriots. But the thing with Herbert is that, and I think I feel the same way about Love. So I want to hear what you have to say. But with Herbert, to me, it's a lot about this guy looks like a quarterback. It's kind of he looks great in shorts thing, which how often has that ever worked out for a team? He looks like a quarterback. He throws like a quarterback. He makes some great NFL throws. He has throughout his whole career. But every time it came to a big game, he didn't step up. Even that Wisconsin game that they won, they should have won way more handily. He did not play well. I was the biggest Herbert defender until his senior season. And I watched a lot of his games this year, and I truthfully was just not very impressed. I think there's certain things he does really well, like he works through his progressions really well, which is obviously it's really important on the pro level, right? You need that. You need a guy that's not just going to be staring down one receiver, and we've seen that as Jets fans. We've seen that quite often in the past. Not you, Sam, if you're listening. But I don't know. I think he's just had really an up and down collegiate career. One that is, when you're looking at his part of his junior year, it was so good, and part of his senior year, it was so good that you take him first overall. And then the other part that was so bad, you wouldn't even take this guy in the first round based on some of those games he's played. He misses a lot of open receivers, and I think he threw just too many interceptions and just had too many turnovers. So that's my feeling on Herbert. I'm interested to hear what you have to say because I feel like if I know you well, I feel like you're a huge Herbert guy.
I wouldn't say I'm a huge Herbert guy. I think when you talk about like a second round graded quarterback, I think most teams probably would have a mid round grade on him. But if you want him, you're going to have to take him in the top 6.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, the rounds with quarterbacks doesn't always I don't really put any stock into that. If you want a quarterback, go up and get him. That's just how it's going to be. So, and it's tough. I think it really hurt Mitchell Trubisky to be the number 2 overall pick, where I don't think really Chicago thought he was the second best player in the draft. They just thought that was where they had to be to take quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I think he really had dominant numbers in the Pac-12 last year. The Pac-12 was kind of down. He didn't really play in a very good team. He had a lot of injuries.
And I mean, in fairness, he threw for over 10,000 yards and had 108 touchdowns in his career. So I'm not taking anything away on the yards, but to me, it was just when the big game came, I felt like he beat up on the bad teams, and the big moment came, and he just wasn't there for it.
I mean, they did win the Rose Bowl. I don't know. I feel like you can put some stock into that. They won the Pac-12. He put a lot of effort into his senior year. I like a guy that would come back and kind of finish, what he started there. To me, like I said, you put a lot of stock into the intangibles,
Yeah.
and a guy who wants to be a leader, a guy who wants to, have a legacy somewhere. To me, that's important. I really admire that in a quarterback, especially who probably would have, if not for the, Kingsbury hiring and the late jump with Kyler Murray, probably been a top 5, top 10 pick last year. And maybe the Giants take him instead of Daniel Jones. And I think a lot of what you're saying was what people were saying about Daniel Jones. And I don't think it's fair to compare them because they're totally different quarterbacks. But, a guy who didn't really win a ton of games, even though Herbert did win a lot of games. And wasn't like a bona fide like visual star. Like you're not watching him and this is jumping out on the screen. Like this is that good. I just think he dealt with a lot of stuff at Oregon where he put himself in a position where the only thing he could have done was fall in terms of his draft stock. He couldn't really raise it up at all. Like I said, an injury-prone team. His coaching staff was kind of in flux for his time there. And there wasn't really an NFL guy on the team that you're looking at and you're like, oh, well, he was good because of him. There's a very fair point to be made about who was good because of Jeudy and Ruggs, and that's why he was
and
what
Burrow
he was.
With Jefferson, yeah.
Right, and Burrow with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Thaddeus Moss and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Oregon doesn't have the same offensive line as these other teams. Oregon's offensive line is good. It's probably the best in the Pac-12 besides maybe USC. I think if you're LA Chargers, he's the guy to move. Well, I guess there is only one. No, the Rams still.
The Rams, yeah.
Las Vegas, whatever. I think that's got to be your guy. I think if you're the Chargers, it's got to be your guy. Like I said, whatever happens with the start of the season, I don't know how that's going to affect anything because nobody really knows right now. But I think he's more like Burrow, where people might think he's a little bit tapped out because he's a little bit older. But I don't believe in that. And the Chargers situation was a little bit weird. I was kind of surprised they retained Anthony Lynn this season, but he is an offensive mind. And that's a team that also, to me, has a lot of good skill players. And it would be definitely interesting to see him in an NFL system where he could be kind of an RPO guy as he was in college. But I think he's actually got better arm strength than Burrow. And I'm excited to see all these guys. I always love a young quarterback. So I'm in on Herbert, definitely more than you. But I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar. I do think he's a dependable player, and I do think he's going to go. If I had to make a prediction gun in my head, I do think he's going to go second overall.
And I like that you brought up, you think he's going to go second overall?
I think he's going to go second, yeah.
Yeah, I'm shocked that you're on this so much because I think Chase Young is the most can't-miss player in the draft. And I just don't see a scenario in which the Redskins give up.
Chase Young isn't going to win the Redskins really any more games than if they had 2 extra first-round picks, 3 extra first-round picks.
Yeah, but they're not going to get that many extra first-round picks for the second overall pick. It's just.
I mean, where would the Chargers be moving up from?
6.
The Jets from 6 to 3 gave up 2 seconds. And you flip from 2 to 7,
Yeah.
There's definitely value to be had there. I don't see Miami going up for him just for whatever reason. I think they're a Tua team. And I think that was their plan going into last season. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah, tank for Tua. And Jordan Love's another guy, kind of the same thing with Herbert, where he was at Utah State last year. He had a great year. People expected him to leave, be a first-round pick. He decided to go back for his senior season and kind of tanked his senior season. He did not have a very good year. I think he was very close to 1-to-1 on the touchdown interception. He threw something like 18 or 19 interceptions, something crazy. I hope I'm not getting that number wrong, and it was 5, but it definitely was high. But he's another guy that to me he's got the quarterback look here. He has the tight spiral and he looks great in shorts and. He comes out and he makes all the throws I think he has to make. He's not one of those guys that's missing a lot of open throws. He's hitting his guys he needs to hit. He's moving the chains. He's doing all that. I'm not sure the extra that he gives you besides what he can give you in an RPO or even just a run-heavy offense. And if you're a team like the Colts looking to draft a quarterback, is Jordan Love your guy when you have such a great offensive line and such a good running back? I think that is actually a pretty great fit for him if he does go there. And I think Love to the Colts makes a lot more sense than Love to the Patriots for me. But maybe you can break him down a little bit more.
This is going to be – Jordan Love's a really tough sell. He's pretty much pitiful outside of the numbers. By far the highest.
But that's where, if you want a guy that's just going to hit 10-yard throws and do RPOs and just run the option, that's like Utah State football. That's exactly what you want. And that's where I can't, conceive this guy being a first-round pick is very strange to me.
He ran into a problem this offseason where his head coach left to go to Texas Tech, which could somewhat benefit him. The Texas Tech pipeline is obviously pretty hot right now.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly struggled this year, and there were games where he was really, really bad. I don't totally see it with him. Good deep ball thrower, but everything's over the middle.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't really have a lot of decisiveness, and really just outside of the numbers is just really poor. He can't really look a cornerback off. He just doesn't really have a lot of things that are transferable right now, and he's in a really bad spot because you can't really bring him in as a second quarterback. He really has to be a third-string guy to start a season.
Yeah.
And for a guy that's really not going to have a lot of reps because of the limitations on practice as it is, even without coronavirus, and he's not going to be a guy who could be like a dependable number 2 for really any kind of other quarterback. And I don't think it's Phillip Rivers' job to be his, mentor or whatever.
Yeah.
If he were to go to Indianapolis, especially because they're so different. So I think he's a really, really tough guy to draft in the first round just because you really have to do some kind of adjusting in your quarterback room.
But I mean, he's not slipping past pick 20, right?
I don't think he will, but he's going to have to go to a place where they're going to really, really invest a lot into what he can be.
Yeah.
And if it takes a long time, it takes a long time, but there isn't a lot of patience in quarterbacks anymore. Aaron Rodgers really was the last one to be groomed the way he was. Yeah. And the game today is going to be really hard for someone like him. To his credit, not that his offensive system was tremendously different in this season from it was the year before, but he was able to, be exposed to a new playbook and figure it out enough to have success. So that's a good sign. I do think he's a pretty smart quarterback just because of the system he ran, and he did put up big numbers. But he just had some really, really pitiful throws and games. And to me, when you're playing at Utah State, you have to be the man in every game you're in.
Yep.
And he really wasn't. I think there's a lot of guys like him in college football. And for him, his previous season definitely sets him apart. But I can't be hypocritical and say that, because of his season before, he's a guy you can take a chance on in the early first round. And with Burrow, be like, no, that's a guy that has to be because of his last season is the number 1 pick. So got to stay accountable, and I'll be out on Jordan Love.
So, I think I'm not quite as down on Jordan Love as you are. I don't think he's going to be very good. But to me, I think him and Herbert are almost a wash. But I think both of us are taking Herbert over Love, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a no-brainer. All right, let's look at the receivers. We don't have to go quite as in-depth on these guys. But we've got 3. You've got 3 top receivers, 2 Alabama guys, 1 Oklahoma guy. You've got Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb. Just tell me, of those 3 guys, who are you taking and why? Why is it that person?
I would say Jeudy just because he's going to be the guy who's ready to go right away. You don't really need to design a lot of stuff for him. He's such a good route runner. It's kind of insane. His ability to not only get in and out of his brace really fast, he finishes really through contact a lot, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that. He's going to be at a disadvantage because of the offense he was in. And it's a weird, like, contradiction, catch-22. Like, oh, well, Tua made him good, and he had Tua, and he's on Alabama, and he's this and he's that. He to me is a special player. Drafting a guy like him that early, though, I'm not totally into it. There's been way too many first-round receiver busts, and I don't want to hold other guys' careers against him because that's totally unfair to him. But it's just one of those things. Being a receiver in the NFL is really, really hard, and you're not getting the same amount of like mental prep and focus as a quarterback when a lot of times it's almost just as hard to go from a totally new system and catch on right away. And there's just a lot of really good receivers in the NFL. And if you're not a guy that's going to break a game, they're not going to have a lot of patience for somebody who can't pick up a playbook and can't, do the extra things. I have no idea if that's how he is. I don't believe he's like that.
Yeah.
But I'm taking him. Ruggs' speed is just special. He's a guy you're going to have to kind of scheme a little bit more for him, which takes down a little bit. But if he can be like Tyreek Hill, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Well, I do actually. Let's talk about Let's not talk about Tyreek Hill. Let's talk about Henry Ruggs for a second, and then I'll get into who I would take. But Henry Ruggs, the interesting thing with Ruggs is that yes, he does have just incredible blazing speed, but and most of the guys, in fairness, that have run a 4.340 or less at the combine have been total busts. So I think there's just a huge red flag when you are the fastest guy at the combine. But the thing that separates Ruggs from a Jacoby Ford or a Darius Hayward-Bay or a John Ross, those kind of guys, is that he was running really complex routes in college. And I don't know if that was a product of going to Alabama or if it's because he's a good receiver or what it was that he was taught how to run these really difficult routes. And so, yes, he has the game-breaking speed, and you do have to game plan around that because at any time you could have him just going on a vert route and hitting him for a touchdown. But I think this guy brings you a lot as just the number one receiver in general, and that's why I think taking him with a higher pick makes sense. I think Ruggs makes sense, and I want to make the bold claim that I think Ruggs is going to have the better NFL career than Jeudy.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Maybe it wasn't so bold then.
With CeeDee Lamb, well, it's bold in a lot of places. I mean, Jeudy's being mocked in the top 7 in a lot of drafts right now. CeeDee Lamb, I think, is a pretty safe pick. The numbers obviously off the charts.
Yeah.
But for all three of these guys, for me, is how do you get accustomed to losing? How do you get accustomed to not having your hand on the ball so many times during a game? To me, that's a major adjustment that some guys can make and some guys can't. These don't really seem like too big of injury concern guys, so the durability seems to be there. And to me, all these guys showed up on a big stage. I would have liked to see Alabama, in the college football playoff this year. I think we'd have a lot better read on Ruggs and Jeudy if you saw them play in those.
Well, you didn't think the Citrus Bowl was enough against Michigan?
It would have been a lot easier, I think, for guys to kind of determine their selection. So I'm going. I guess if I were a GM in the top 30, because I really don't think you're going to go too far for a receiver in the first round. I'm going Jeudy, Ruggs, Lamb.
Okay, I am going.
And it's close. It's not like, to me, I think all these guys are relatively safe, but those concerns I had are prevalent.
So I'm going Lamb, Jeudy, Ruggs. Even though, and again, I want to make it clear, I do think Ruggs is going to end up having the better NFL career. I think Judy's one of those guys where if you don't select him and you take Ruggs instead, and Ruggs is a Darius Hayward-Bay, and Judy's a Julio Jones, I mean, you're never work again. Yeah. So I think if you're a GM just thinking about job security, Judy's the safe pick there. I like Lamb a lot. I think just the things that Lamb can do with the ball in his hands are unlike any of these receivers and really any of the receivers in this draft class, besides maybe Jalen Reagor. Give a little TCU shout out there. But the things that CeeDee Lamb can do, and he is just an incredible route runner. I think he's maybe got the surest hands of all three of these guys. But you can set up a lot of bubble screens, and you can do these quick routes that are very popular with the RPO, and you can hit Lamb, and Lamb can take it to the house on pretty much every play. And of course, that's in college, and of course, he wasn't going up against the same defenses that Jeudy and Ruggs were going up against. But I just don't think that it matters who you're playing against when you've got that kind of talent. And I'm not saying that he's going to break everyone for a touchdown and get 50 yards of play, but I think that he's the kind of guy that you can throw a 1-yard pass to and he gets you the 10 yards for the first down. So I like Lamb a lot. I love what he can do on his routes. I love how he catches the ball, and I think he's a threat on all three levels of the field. But I for sure am taking him just for his playmaking ability, and the fact that at least for the first few years of his career, when he's not probably going to be the true number one guy, like let's say he ends up with the Jets and he's maybe the number 2 to Enunwa, I think you throw him back there on punt returns, and this guy can be electric on punt returns as well. And Joe, you might know more about that, of just do teams even put their best receivers at punt returns anymore? Is there too much of an injury concern?
I would say for a rookie, it's too much responsibility to be in your top 2 in depth chart and also punt returner. I guess one kind of positive about Jeudy and Ruggs too is they were able to coexist together as 2 stars, but it's very different still in the NFL when you're not the guy, because you still feel like you're the guy when you have 90 guys on your team and you're in the top 6,
Mm-hmm.
So just one that's really my biggest concern, because I think the skill set with all these guys is there. I don't think this class is as deep. I don't like Denzel Mims. I don't like Rieger that much. I loved Laviska Shenault last year. I think he's a total boomer bust pick now. I like Van Jefferson a lot from Florida. But other than that, this is definitely a deep class. I think a lot of receivers are going to go in the top 3 rounds. But depending on situation, depending on fit, depending on all that stuff, I think you're going to see pretty much a 50-50 split in terms of bust and boom here, as it normally is for a receiver.
Yeah, and I'm going to make my TCU bias very clear throughout this entirety of us doing the show. There is a TCU bias there, but I do like Rieger. But yeah, I don't like Mims. I like Jefferson. I don't like T. Higgins from Clemson, and I think Higgins is probably going to go in the top 30. And I think that's kind of a mistake there. But the other big positional battle, at least on offense, there's 3 guys that could easily go, 1, 2, or 3, just depending on the team that takes them. And that's the running back position with DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, and J.K. Dobbins. And then who was the other running back that you could even throw in there?
I mean, LaMichael Pirine, Zach Moss from Utah. To me, those are 2 guys that should be kind of with them. I do think those 3 guys will be drafted before. So with this, Taylor, I think, is a sure thing. I can't really see how he busts.
The only way I see how he busts is if he's just got so much wear and tear. I mean, he's got close to 1,000 carries in college in 3 years.
Yeah,
carried the ball over 300 times 3 straight years is crazy.
Yeah, it's hard. A lot that is trending in the NFL right now to take the guy with the least amount of carries, like Alvin Kamara had.
Mm-hmm.
But a guy like Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley and James Conner, those are guys with a lot of wear and tear in their tires.
Yeah.
Taylor, I think, is a sure thing. Like I said, I don't think he's going to be the first running back drafted. I think it'll probably be Dobbins, probably a more complete player and definitely a lot more room for excitement with him. Swift is a really good pass blocker. I think this Georgia team is going to be loaded with good NFL prospects, and you're going to look back later on and be surprised that this team wasn't a CFP team.
No.
So I don't think you can really go wrong with those 3 guys. I think this is actually a better running back class, top heavy in terms of that 2nd, 3rd round talent than the receiver class. I think you have more not sure things, but a much better chance of success. The analytics and things like that love Zach Moss from Utah, who bounced back from a torn ACL and had a really, really good year for Utah that won probably more games than they should have. And Pirine, to me, is somebody who, for some reason, under the radar, I don't really see a lot of weaknesses with him. I don't really think he's a tremendous pass blocker. And I don't think he's ever going to be counted on to be an every down back from the start. So I don't know how big of a deal it's going to be. Taylor's pass blocking was kind of criticized, but he was on a team that really, he was the focal point, and he was another guy that was really, really consistent. You knew pretty much what you were going to get in every play. His vision is really, really good. And he was somebody that, to me, had the intangible leadership stuff that I like about Burrow and I like about Herbert. So I think Dobbins will be picked before all these guys. Chase Edwards-Helaire, who I think we're kind of forgetting too, is somebody that should be up there as well. I think next year's running back class is really exciting too. But for me, I guess I would, for those three guys you said, I think the draft order is going to be Dobbins, Taylor, and Swift. If I had to go the safe route, I would say Taylor, Swift, and Dobbins. But my three favorites are actually probably Taylor, Pirine, and Dobbins.
Do you think any of these guys get taken in the first round?
It wouldn't shock me to see the Chiefs take one of them in the first round. I think if they were to take one, it would be Edwards-Helaire, just because it's a little more of a spaced out system there. Swift is intriguing to me, especially because he came from playing Pennsylvania college football to playing in the SEC and succeeding pretty much right away, which is a little unusual. So to me, that shows he can kind of make a jump really fast like that. He was banged up, especially at the end of the year this season. But that's a really good Georgia team. So there were games he stood out, there were games he didn't. But that would be my top three for that.
Yeah, so the thing I love with Swift, first of all, is he was in the backfield with Sony Michel and Nick Chubb at one point, which is just unbelievable. And then he had Elijah Holyfield as well. So, he was kind of splitting carries. But the thing I love with Swift is I just think what he brings you in the passing game is so much better than even Dobbins, because Swift is a great blocker. He's a great pass blocker. And you need that in today's NFL. And I think he would be a good fit with the Chiefs maybe, as a guy that could run it 12 to 15 times a game, but just be out there kind of blocking for Mahomes. And that is so valuable in today's NFL, which I love. And that's where Jonathan Taylor, I think, really struggles, is that he did up his numbers. I think he had like 26 or 28 catches in his senior year after having like 8 total to the previous 2 years, or in his junior year, excuse me. But you do worry about the wear and tear, because you see it with these guys when they come to the NFL. They were run so much, and one, it definitely ups your stats when a guy that has over 2,000 rush yards has a yards per carry under 7 yards is kind of telling. I don't know. Maybe that's too into the weeds with the numbers, but I like to get in there and look at all the stats. But to me, that's a little bit telling. I'm not sure that Taylor's your home run type back. I think he's kind of grinded out. But on the flip side, I kind of knock Saquon Barkley for the opposite reason. And I don't know. It's impossible to tell with running backs, right? And you just never know how they're going to react to the next level. And to me, Taylor, he finds the hole great, and he's definitely a great runner. You just worry about what he's kind of put on his body, even in high school when he was running for over 2,000 yards a season.
Yeah.
And then
I will say just real quick, I think pass blocking for running backs is a lot really about just preparedness and like not so much effort, but just having a really good understanding of football.
So you think it's something that could be taught? You think Taylor could be taught?
Not so much taught, but I think it is a skill that if you're not a good pass blocker, it's hard to be a really good pass blocking running back.
Yeah.
If it just has a lot to do with just knowing where to be on the field on every play.
Okay.
So I don't think it's as big of a concern. I think it depends on the team he goes to, but I don't think you're going to see him really on 3rd and long too often, on any NFL team. So I don't know how much it's really going to impact him. So.
But that's where, I think what it comes down to with the running backs, and just the last thing, Dobbins, like you said, you pretty much covered everything, but the guy's, he's a complete running back.
Yeah, Dobbins stood out pretty much every game you watched for Ohio State.
Yeah, he's incredible. So I think he'll be great for any team. But the reason I kind of was talking about the pass blocking is, if you look at the Chiefs, that's probably maybe the only team besides potentially the Dolphins that would take a running back in the first round. You just figure the Dolphins could take anyone because they have 3 first-round picks, so you really have no idea. But But if the Chiefs were to take Jonathan Taylor, I just don't see that as being a good fit. They're not a run-heavy, run-first team where I think he would need to go to a run-heavy team. Was my only point there, where I think Swift makes more sense. But I think for me, it goes Dobbins, Taylor, Swift would be my 1, 2, 3 out of these guys. So Joe, let's start to wrap it up here. We've got 2 more quick things we want to do. Let's do the Jets team needs. Like I said, we're not going to go too deep into this, but it is our favorite team here. A team that really formed our friendship was watching the games together. And so we got to give a little shout out to the Jets and what we hope for in the draft. And just looking through their team needs, you've got 3 on offense, 3 on defense, or limited to the top 3. I think on offense, you're looking at offensive tackle, interior offensive line, and then obviously wide receiver. And then on defense, you're looking at cornerback, edge rusher, which, most teams are looking for. But then the defensive line. I mean, I just need to get this off my chest. I can't believe that after 15 years of defensive line picks, having to watch line after lineman after lineman after lineman after lineman get picked, we're still putting that in the top 3 for the Jets of what the Jets need. So that's frustrating to me. I don't like seeing that. I don't even like that I had to make the graphic that showed that was one of their team needs. And maybe you disagree, and I know you don't want to get it too much into it, but for me, I that's just a tough look for me to have on the team needs. But I'm going to be really upset if the Jets don't go offense here in the first round. And I wanted them to take I'm blanking on his name. Is it Malachi Bolton? What's his name?
Becton.
Mekhi Becton. I wasn't even close. Mekhi Becton. I wanted them to take him, and now all this stuff's coming out about he had potentially a failed drug test at the combine, which could be a concern if you're looking at some kind of suspension, and you've already got the limited time here before the season starts. But I'd love to see them take a receiver. I just would. You don't see them take splash guys too often in the first round. Obviously, I loved the Darnold pick 2 years ago, but I'd really, really love to see them. And I know they need an offensive lineman, and I know they need to build up that offensive line. But I would love to see them take one of those 3 wide receivers. Personally, I'd love to see CeeDee Lamb on the team just to get some excitement going, and I think it would be great for Darnold. But for me, I think your 1 and 2 picks have to be offensive line and wide receiver. So if you go offensive line in the first round, you have to go receiver in the second round. And if you go receiver in the first round, you have to go offensive line in the second round. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Joe.
I'll add that I actually think this defensive line is arguably the strongest unit on the team, besides safety.
Okay.
So I really, really like this defensive line a lot. And I can't imagine they take a first or second round defensive lineman. No. With that being said, yeah, you got to protect your investment here. Your investment is in Sam Darnold. Your investment is in the offense. You're an offensive center team. And I think Becton is the guy. Becton stood out on film a lot. I mean, over and over again. Really, really dominating games. The failed drug test, is it concerning? Yeah. Laramie Tunsil, a similar situation. Again, you don't want to compare, but still was a top 15 pick.
Plus, with the new CBA, it might not even be like if it's a weed thing, then it's really not a big concern. But
it's a lapse in judgment for sure. Yeah. And this is a guy who's already had his football priorities a little bit questioned to begin with. I think he's the guy there. I think he's a rock solid left tackle. Wirfs and the Alabama one, who I can't think of his name right now, Willis. Little more project-y, probably better athletes. But Becton, if he's on a line that's probably already good, he's going to really, really stick out, I think. And I don't think there's anything about his size that doesn't translate into an NFL player. I mean, you look at him, this guy is a guy who can play left or right tackle and really succeed. It's going to be very reliant on who else is on that offensive line. If you're going to return even one starter, which I believe they will be, it would be beneficial for me. But there's a big learning curve to play offensive line in the NFL.
Yeah.
It's really, really big. So, if you want to say Wills is probably your guy just because he probably had a little bit more, responsibility than a guy from Louisville or a guy from Iowa, that's fair. But I think Becton's your guy there.
Okay, I like that. I would not hate to see them trade back in the first round. I'm always a big fan of the trade back, but I do think this is a relatively deep class for both wide receiver and offensive line. So if you did want to trade back, I would not hate to see that to grab an extra second or second and third or whatever round picks there. Okay, let's wrap it up with our sleepers. I'm going to go first with mine because I just want to show some more of my TCU bias, but. I love Lucas Niang. Talk about offensive lineman. I would love if the Jets drafted Lucas Niang because he's projecting right now as a 4th to early 5th round pick. In his freshman and sophomore years, he was projecting as a 1st round pick. Some injuries kind of held him back. He actually played a full season with a separated shoulder. I think it was a separated shoulder. And then the pain was too great last year. He ended up missing the second half of his senior year. But just a couple stats for you, or one stat for you. In 1,207 passing downs, he allowed 0 sacks. So to me, that's a great look, especially on a TCU offensive line that it was up and down, but there were a couple years where it was pretty good. So if you are a weak spot in that line, you would be kind of attacked, and he wasn't clearly. He's just I think he's just got great lateral movement too. You watch him play, and he gets sideline to sideline real quick on run plays. If you're doing a sweep or whatever, he's getting around real quick. He's not letting guys get past him, and he doesn't excel in the run blocking, I wouldn't say. But this is probably the first year I've ever actually watched some like coaches film and stuff like that, which has been kind of fun. Just trying to learn more about the draft. So I actually know what people are talking about, and I know what I'm talking about a little bit when I say these things, which is cool. Because in the past I was just reading other people's words. So I just want to throw that out there. But I have enjoyed watching Lucas Niang a little bit because I think he makes every block he needs to make, and I think you can't really ask for anything more in the NFL. So to me, whatever team takes him, if it's the 4th round, the 5th round, whatever, I think they're getting a steal. I think this guy's a sleeper, and I think he's going to be in the league for a long time. And maybe it's not the sexiest sleeper pick to pick an offensive lineman, but if you can bolster that offensive line with a later round pick and you've got your guy for 10 years, I think any team would be happy with that.
So for my sleeper, I have Willie Gay from Mississippi State. He's a guy that you can pretty much throw in at any team and he's going to succeed. I can see him being like a Seahawks type defender who's hits hard, is rangy, has a lot of just passion, dog mentality. A guy who stands out. He's certainly going to be a draftable player, probably in the top 4 or 5 rounds. I think he's probably going to jump a little bit because I think he really stands out on film. Couple other sleepers: Curtis Weaver from Boise State, who's a pass rusher. Kyle Duggar from Lenoir Rhine, a safety, who was somebody that we had to piece together film on. That wasn't easy to piece together because that is not easy film to get or anything. So that was fun to watch. Van Jefferson from Florida, who I talked about, I think is going to be in that top echelon of receivers. Hassis Dubois, another receiver from Virginia, who I actually went to high school with, but he is somebody who will make an NFL team happy. 0 drop passes this season for a surprisingly good Virginia team. He was, I believe, a 1,000-yard guy, and he is somebody that probably tail end 6th, 7th round will be drafted. So a couple guys to look at, but I would say Gay would be the top of that list. So, and my number 1 overall player, just throwing this out there. I kind of like wasn't sure about this one just because I'm saying Burrow, QB1, all that kind of stuff. But I think the best pro you're going to see from this is Xavier McKinney from Alabama, who's a safety.
Safety, right? Yeah.
And he should be a 1st-round pick, but I think he's going to be the guy. I think he's a lot better than Delpit. And if I were to say who is going to be the best player looking back in our redraft, he may not be the number 1 pick, but I think he is going to be the biggest difference maker on defense. Okay.
You've just made a lot of people where I live out here in Fort Worth very happy because he's projected going to the Cowboys. So if he actually drops that far, I think a lot of Cowboys fans will be really happy. So let's kind of wrap up our wrap up there. That was a week one with looking ahead to the NFL draft. We'll come back next week looking at the NFL draft. Maybe we'll release on Sunday. Just kind of do a wrap up of the full week, look at some winners and losers and all that. And it's impossible to pick right away until you've actually seen these guys play. But hopefully there'll be some cool storylines, or we could at least talk about all the teams screwing up with their audio and trying to get their picks in, and how many times. This is something I'm not looking forward to is live tweeting the draft, because I think that it's going to be just like terrible. These coaches trying to figure this out, and I think it's going to take like 6 hours in the first round. They're just going to keep having to pause the clock and lose connection and all that. But let's I don't know, it's YouTube. Do we have to say rate and subscribe? Is that something like you have to
I think so, yeah.
drop it? Are we contractually obligated? All right,
Yeah.
so you can rate and subscribe. You can leave us some comments about what you thought or whatever. Go follow us on social media. It's at network_SNG, I think, on all social media. And then go check out the website, sngnetwork.com. But that wraps it up for us. But we will be back with you guys next week.